Okay, everybody, we are live. Welcome to the November 26th meeting. I'll call this meeting to order, and can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Steve Lane. All those in favor?
In favor.
That motion's carried. Okay, do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Hearing none, if one pops up, please let me know. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Carolyn, seconded by Don. All those in favor?
Favor.
That motion's carried. Okay, we have a series of correspondence. Can I have a motion to receive the correspondence? Moved by Don, seconded by Tracy. All those in favor?
Favor.
That motion's carried. Okay, we have one deputation, Mr. Morris. So anytime you want to flip on your screen, there we go. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Good morning. The purpose of my deputation is to present my suggestions as a City of Kawartha Lakes resident for monitoring and reporting on the ATV pilot. That's item 10 on your agenda. Here's what, in my opinion, monitoring and reporting should include. First of all, signage, identifying permitted and prohibited routes, signage that includes numbers to contact to file reports on infractions, named city staff who will be responsible for gathering data and preparing reports to council, tracking of collisions, accidents, ATV-related ER visits and hospitalizations, and of any ATV traffic charges laid. Tracking of all ATV-related complaints made to bylaw and police services, including noise complaints and complaints of ATV use in locations where they are prohibited. Setting of a threshold so a certain number of complaints to police and bylaw would automatically trigger council debate on ending the pilot. Tracking of numbers of ATVs using the roads. A professionally developed official survey of residents in Lindsay and the other settlement areas with roads opened up to ATVs. This should be done by end of year one and should ask about impact of ATVs on quality of life, personal health, and safety. A second survey at the end of the term of the pilot project to ask whether residents are in favor of continuing to allow road access to ATVs. An outline of enforcement measures for speed limits and unsafe operation and provisions for proactive and timely responses to outlying areas. Documenting of education and public safety programs carried out by the municipality in cooperation with bylaw and police enforcement. Calculation of the costs incurred by the pilot project for repair and maintenance, signage, enforcement, education, and so on. A clear timeline for reporting to council and outline of what will be included in the reports. And for those reports, a comment period of several weeks with advance notice in the media and on the website directing people to an email address to provide comment prior to a report going to council. Early in the process, communication of the plan to stakeholders. As advocates for increased ATV use of roads, I hope you will see it as your responsibility to also be advocates for thorough, even-handed, transparent monitoring and reporting. In closing, I'd like to explain why I believe this is of vital importance. Many concerns have been raised about giving off-road vehicles access to roads. In neither task force nor council meetings, nor in the Q&A set up on the task force's jump-in page have, in my opinion, the concerns been properly addressed. The ORV task force and council received without discussion reports and letters from the directors of public works, community services, HKPR, health unit, medical officer of health, police chief, insurance risk management officer, the city's environmental advisory committee. Through the jump-in page, I asked, why was there no discussion of the concerns raised, the questions asked, and the relevant data introduced in the submissions from these experts in their fields? The response I got was, the task force has used different methods of data gathering and public consultation to collect all information and report back to council. Frankly, not very specific and not very helpful. 4 months ago, I pointed out, as have others, that ATV manufacturers warn never use on public roads and asked, given this, why do you think ATVs on roads should be allowed? Rather than answering the question asked, the ORV task force response given was, The rationale for manufacturer stickers would be best discussed with the manufacturers. Many CKL residents have expressed opposition to ATVs on roads. On the simple, clear, two-question survey developed by the city, 2/3 of Lindsay respondents said they did not approve of the Lindsay route. Same result when Bobcaygeon residents were surveyed. And on a petition posted on the city's jump-in site, 847 CKL residents registered their opposition to allowing ATVs on Lindsay roads. But here we are. Council has voted to approve a route through Lindsay as a 2-year pilot. At the next council meeting, it seems set to open up additional roads to ATVs in Omini, Pontypool, Cameron, Janetville, and Bethany, again as part of a pilot project. Given all the unaddressed concerns and the potential impact on city residents, given that there's been no safety review for the roads in the pilot, and given there was no public consultation on opening the additional roads, there's a huge responsibility to treat the project status as a pilot seriously, a responsibility to put in place a solid plan to monitor and report. Thank you for allowing me to make this deputation.
Thank you, Jamie. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask Ms. Morse? Okay, hearing no questions, can I have a motion to receive the deputation? Moved by Carolyn, seconded by Steve. All those in favor?
Favor?
That motion is carried. We'll be dealing with that issue very shortly, and we'll see where it goes.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, just give me a second to scroll down. All right, item number 6, we have no response from council. They haven't given us any further directions. So I'll declare that order of business closed. That was put on the agenda just in case council sent something back to us they wanted us to discuss, and they haven't. So item 6, I would declare, I'll close that item of business closed. Response to council on recommendations for Bobcaygeon route. Once again, council has made a decision on that item, and I don't know, does anybody have anything they want to address on that? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah,
I've lost your sound.
as a former resident of Bobcaygeon and a resort owner, family resort owner, I think we definitely need to do some more work in regards to the resorts in Bobcaygeon for the access of ATVs to the roads in the future. We haven't really done too much with that, and I believe that it's the livelihood of Bobcaygeon resort owners to have a say here. So I think in the future we should look at that.
Yeah, and it won't be by this committee because our term of office comes to end at the end of December regardless. But maybe after having a year's experience with Lindsay and the other routes, we'll be in a better position, and so will everybody else be in a better position to comment. But that's duly noted, and it'll form, well, obviously part of the YouTube meeting. Recommendations for any additional routes. I think we've pretty much covered that one off. We've made our recommendations to council, and council, as you well know, have approved some, moderated or altered some, and rejected some. All right. So I guess I'm on the wrong agenda. I haven't got the latest updated agenda, but I think the next part of the agenda is discussion on making recommendations to council as far as how we monitor this. That's or how council is going to monitor it. I guess it's because it will be a recommendation to council. We've heard Mr. Morris. Everybody's had an opportunity. John Carr couldn't make it, but he did send in some recommendations, and maybe we'll use that as the as an opening thing. to get going, and we can sort of run through them, and I'll maybe ask Brianne to share the screen. And then I'll ask for comments. I'm going to start it off before we get into the business of making recommendations. I've talked to Manager Sloan. They have agreed to be the clearinghouse for information. And if in fact council adopts the recommendations, then they would reach out to the OPP and to the city police force that in cases of, because our own call center will automatically send them there anyway. They will reach out to both the OPP and the Kawartha Lakes Police Service, that when they get complaints, that they forward those complaints. I mean, they'll conduct their investigation as per normal, but they'll let municipal law enforcement know of the complaint. So if we want to look at your screen, some of the recommendations are an evaluation of ORV route through town, feedback from residents along the route, survey residents along the route, and track complaints that come into CKL. Okay, so the first question is or the third part of that is easy because Manager Sloan has, and Aaron, if I speak out of turn, please jump in and correct me. Okay, he's not correcting me, so I guess I'm right so far. He's agreed to house the complaints and prepare the reports whenever the report needs to be prepared. The second recommendation is a survey of CATVA members. The third recommendation coming forward is feedback from the Lindsay Police Department, how many tickets issued along the routes, and track complaints. That portion would already be done once again through the Municipal Law Enforcement Office. Baseline versus study period. I'm not exactly sure what John meant by that. Track injuries that occur on routes versus ORV related injuries in city of Kawartha Lakes. Take into consideration provincial trends when analyzing any injury data. Survey of business owners on or near the routes to determine if there have been any changes in business that can be attributed to ORVs, and feedback from ORV retailers and repair shops to determine if there has been any change in business that can be attributed to the Lindsay route. So those are the recommendations that John's puts forward. I think probably we should discuss them, and then we'll move to each task force member and see what they have on their mind, and then we'll try to put together some sort of a motion. We've all heard from Mr. Morris. We know what his positions are, and so on Mr. Carr's recommendations, do I have any remarks? Okay, go ahead, Carolyn. You can take that screen down now so I can see everybody, if you don't mind, Brianne. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what he meant by the baseline versus study period was probably for, and I'm just going to make an example up. If there was 4 injury-related accidents in Kawartha Lakes this year on roads, then that would be our baseline in 2021, and then compare that to 2022 and so on. So I'm pretty sure that's what he means by the baseline versus study period.
Okay. Now, they talk about survey, or John talks about surveys. Maybe I'll ask Ashley to jump in here because you're a communications person. Are you able to do a survey of the individual residents on and solely the residents that are on the routes?
So we would have to either do a separate survey through the jump-in platform that is only allocated to those who register. So we'd essentially have to get everyone along the route to provide their information. And then the survey would only be open to those that are registered with that correct information. or we could figure out another alternative, something either in paper or that'll be a discussion with the team there. But yes, it is possible.
Okay, so-
Otherwise, we'll use an online form, and again, we'll just have to confirm the information and validate it with addresses to ensure that we're only speaking to those along the route.
Okay, because where my question arises, and I'll just pick Porter Road, where they'll all share the same address or whatever. How would you know that they live on the particular on that particular road, because their postal codes would not indicate that? It almost have to be something where you go to the tax records. Can you do
Yes.
that? Are you allowed to go to the tax records to get information?
Again, we would have to confirm through using, consent to let those members know that we're interested in finding their information solely for the purpose of gaining feedback for the route. We could work with our tax and rev and MPAC services, but again, we'd have to make sure we've got consent before using any of that information. And if these residents are interested in providing feedback, then I don't see it being a problem, but that's something we can work on together.
Okay, all right. Yeah, go ahead, Tracy.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment. I was wondering if Manager Sloan can just give us maybe a recap on measurement and monitoring from his office.
So we do track some bylaw related issues now. We use a program called CityWorks to do so. Certainly once this project concludes and is kicked off into the actual pilot project, we'll have to make some adjustments to that program and increase our communications with the police services so that we can share the information back and forth. Is that what you're asking, Tracy?
Basically, yeah, just kind of a quick recap just to put it out there. Also, I noticed on John's notes regarding education and communication, and I was wondering if Carolyn wanted to speak to that regarding stewardship through Kawartha ATV.
Okay, yeah, so we are going to work with city staff, including enforcement, Aaron's department, as well as the police service and OPP, to develop some sort of messaging for the community, both riders and non-riders, to try and educate and answer questions, provide information as far as the routes, as far as riders are concerned. We'll be, pushing out the information about the actual routes, providing mapping of the routes to our members as part of their membership. We have just replaced all the signs in Fenelon Falls for the route in Fenelon Falls, so we'll be looking to do the same, provide signage for the routes through the other communities, including Lindsay, as far as where the ATVs can go. And we are going to work with staff to put up some sort of map at each trailhead, so that, again, they can, if they don't have the CAPA map on them, they can see where the route goes and where it doesn't go. And we have access to, email education to our members, as well as whatever it is that we can work on with the city. So we'll be working with city staff to put all of that in place. And we'll be covering the cost of all that, including the signage through city staff will install the signs, but much like Fenelon Falls, we paid for all the signage that was installed, and we'll do that for the same for these other routes. Does that answer your question?
Oh, thank you. In past, I have had to reach out to where I've had issues, and you were able to help me, get through some of those issues. And so I can see that this stewardship and proper communication education is going to be critical. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll have patrols going through the routes as well. Our trail patrol, now they can be on the roads. They'll follow the entire routes to educate the riders again. And if residents, much like on the trails, if they stop them and have questions or concerns, then they'll be there to answer those questions or concerns, or bring them to my attention if there's any problem areas that we need to address with enforcement.
Anybody else got any questions? Do you have any comments, Director Robinson?
Thanks, Councillor Dunn. from a public works perspective, again, we'll provide supports. Again, enforcement is through the relative police agencies and our bylaw group. We will track any other complaints related to damage to roads, municipal infrastructure, those things, and we can help filter that information into any future reports. But no concerns with conversation today.
Okay. Director Rojas?
No real concerns. I did provide correspondence saying that we can do traffic counts. So again, it will be time of day traffic counts, but we do traffic counts for pedestrians, for cyclists, for vehicles. So doing a pedestrian count or a traffic count for ATVs is not an issue, given certain times of days. So if needed, we could do 2 or 3 throughout the pilot. Hopefully that provides some valuable information.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to try and make a motion or a series of recommendations here. Then hopefully everybody will jump in and tweak them. Because I suspect that when it goes to council, it's going to be referred back to staff for them to flesh things out. So as in opposed to just adopting recommendations on the monitoring, we do have some time to actually figure out how we're going to monitor this, or how council is going to monitor it. And Aaron, I'm going to be talking about you all the time. I'm going to assume that what I'm saying works unless you tell me it doesn't. So if have your finger on the key to jump in and argue with me. So I would recommend that the municipal law enforcement become the lead agency on the monitoring of the pilot programs, even though some of them are outside of their enforcement area. I would recommend, and Brianne, hopefully you can capture these as I go. I would recommend that council request that it'll come. Request that the OPP and Kawartha Lake Police Services provide information on complaints regarding ORVs to the MLEO office. I would recommend that as the information they're going to collect, that it involve, of course, who calls in, where the complaint is, the nature of the complaint, and to the best of their ability, whether it's a founded, unfounded, or unknown complaint, like as in, well, a guy drove by here and he didn't have his helmet on. And if we can say yes, or, you know, and in a lot of cases, unfortunately, we're going to say we don't know whether it was a founded complaint or not. Can you think of anything else we would want to monitor? And I think all complaints should go to the MLEO office, and then they can segregate the ones that are on the route as in opposed to the ones that aren't. So if somebody complains about an ATV at Mariposa Estates, we've got it there. It's recorded, but it doesn't involve the 2-year pilot because it's not involved in any of the routes. Anything else that we can possibly recommend? Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
I want to be careful with how we word the reporting aspect of it, because I don't want to get into a situation where we're segregating redirecting people here when they really should be calling the police for the issue that's occurring. So,
and that's where I came up with the and it's going back a lot of years now. It's going back 23 years. Yeah. But we used to have a thing that would stamp every occurrence with a DBS, and it was actual, unfounded, unknown. And that would be the type of information that police would automatically gather. They would say, well, we can't tell, but we did get the complaint, and based on the fact that we got the complaint, we took this action. This is information that police departments automatically gather anyway. And as long as we know where the complaint was and who the complaint came from, because I anticipate that there could be, complaints coming from people that don't live on the roads that the complaints are on. And that might, it doesn't change the fact that there's a complaint, but it may modify the actions that council decides to take as a result of the complaint. So if we have that information at our fingertips, then that would modify the response. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Are the police just going to be reporting complaints, or are they going to be reporting instances on the roads?
Well, anytime, I would recommend that anytime they have an involvement.
Yeah.
So if I'm driving my cruiser down, Pigeon Lake Road, and I stop 3 ATVs there, and I give them a ticket for being in a place they're not allowed to be. That would be, in my opinion, it would be a complaint that they should forward on and say, this is what we did on such and such a date. So that information's there. Having said that, if it was on Pigeon Lake Road, it wouldn't be involved in our trial area anyway, but it would be nice information to have. But I would ask the police services that they report all interactions they have, because when we talk about baselines, that helps also, not in the first year, but it does help in future years, establishing whether or not complaints are going up or going down. And that would also involve trail enforcement. Are the trails getting better? So if we have all the information, we can segregate the information that relates to the trial area, but it's still nice information to have that we can pass on in case at a future date we want to make future adjustments to our bylaw. It gives us facts to work on. Now, go ahead.
Does the emergency services such as fire, ambulance, and would that come in that report also, or would be needed to be separate in regards to instances on?
Okay, and that's an issue. To the best of my knowledge, there is no affirmative reporting requirements. So if I fall off my ATV and break my leg, and I show up at the hospital and they say, well, where did it happen? I say, well, it happened on City Road 8. They have no affirmative requirement by law to phone up the police and say you had a personal injury accident on County Road 8. They may or they may not do that, but there's no law requiring them to do that.
So
Aaron, I noticed you're leaning forward there. Do you have a comment on that? Because that's a good question.
No, I was just typing.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't know. And for me, where I struggle with stats, when stats differ, the only ones that investigate accidents, actually do an investigation, are the policing services. So if their stats differ from other people's stats, I need, myself personally, I would need to know why. But the hospital and EMS, they're not required to report things, to the best of my knowledge. So I don't know.
Maybe Donnie Mitchell, as a former police chief or fire chief, fire chief, would be able to maybe put some input in on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. My former municipality that I work for, we did keep stats on every call. And again, the same as this municipality, when the issue come up or the debate come up about looking at the trail system again, my report would come forward at that time, which I would have stats on of how many calls we attended. And as far as charges laid by the provincial police, I would have no idea, but I would have stats on any issues that we went to as far as any ORVs incidents, no matter whether it was on Crown land, private land, or on roadways. And
But you
that would be distinct of where they were also.
Would you automatically forward that information onto the policing services?
No. No.
Okay, and therein lies the issue.
Yeah, we have no authority to advise the OPP in our area at that time,
Okay.
unless it was, you know, a two vehicle collision. It wasn't a personal issue. Yeah, we wouldn't go that far. On the roadway, yes. On municipal property, yes.
So there's the reason why I suspect even our recommendations will go to staff and then they'll flesh them out.
If I may just comment
Yeah.
a bit farther
Yeah,
too,
please.
Pat. In my former position there, we did have complaints also. And at the end of the day, the end of the year, or whenever you went back and looked at your data to make recommendations or anything to council, it would set a pattern. You would see a pattern in places where one or two people would be complaining all the time.
Okay,
And it'd be such a thing as we would go there and nothing would be going on. So, I mean, after a while, it sets up, you know, it sets itself up. And when you don't have any other complaints from a neighborhood, you know, you have a problem with just those two.
okay, all right. And that's a fair comment, and that's why I said the name of the complainant plus the location of the complaint. And that doesn't make their complaints any less valid.
No.
It just means that there's everything has been generated from the same area. Okay, now the question on surveys. Brian, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do, if that's okay.
Please
Councillor
jump in.
Dunn, just wanted to, I guess, continue the conversation with respect to police and so on before we leave that. What I might recommend is, from a task force perspective, the task force provide recommendations with what types of information, frequency, duration, whatever you want to have available or included within the reports coming back from staff, and leave that with us. Aaron and I can then facilitate some conversations with KLPS OPP perhaps to identify what is capable of being reported back. Again, there's a lot of information that that we can't provide due to confidentiality and other reasons, and we may have to go through and make FOI requests for certain levels of information coming back from the police. So I think what I'd like to see and may make sense, and subject to yourself or confirmation, is really for this task force just to say, this is the type of information we'd like to see reported back. And then leave it with staff to try to see what's capable. And then we'll provide a report back ahead of the pilot commencing in 2022 to say, this is what we believe is a feasible data to be reported back to council on
All right.
on the pilot.
Does that work for everybody on the task force? Okay, so so the recommendation is that the monitoring process be referred back to staff, and the information that we would like to see as a task force would include type of occurrence, location of occurrence, and without getting names, the name of the complainant. Like, we don't need counsel, because we won't be operating as a task force when this information starts to flow. But without naming the names, we got 15 complaints from Mr. A and 14 complaints from Mr. B. And we had 30 complaints in total. And they located at a certain location. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron, please.
So
I'm struggling on this. I'm just trying to put something together on the fly. So,
and that's fine. So I know that there has been some very high level discussions with the police services. I believe a number of councillors maybe sit on their boards or their committees. Has this been discussed in any form yet? Because I would see more of the raw data being submitted to us, and we can vet it and use it for our means. But when I say raw data, again, Brian's absolutely right. They may require an FOI, but if you're looking to capture frivolous complaints, people complaining over and over and over, then we will need complainant information. So has there been any conversation from this task force with the police services to date?
I've talked to Chief Mitchell about it, and he says he'll cooperate in any way that he can. He's more than happy to cooperate in any way that they can. I have not talked to the inspector at the OPP, but I have got assurances from the chief, and I would still have to, council would still have to go through the process of asking him, but he has no reluctance to provide information so that we can actually have some sort of feedback on the format. Okay. Well, then I'm going to try this one more time. Monitoring be referred to, recommended by the board that monitoring be referred to staff. That they include, well, if it's going to staff, they will automatically decide who's going to be the lead agency. That the information gathered include time, date of complaint, complainants identifying factors, location of complaint, type of complaint. Is that pretty much covered?
Frequency.
Frequency of complaints. And that staff bring back a report. Does that kind of work for you, Brian?
Provide information where they can, any additional information maybe.
Yeah, I think that what that does is it provides guidance to staff on what the task force would expect to see as far as information coming back from our enforcement agencies, all three of them, being bylaw, KLPS, and OPP, and enables us to have some conversation to see what's possible, and then we can report that information back to council to ensure they're on board with that information coming out of the review of the pilot.
And I really like the Juan's idea of doing counts. I didn't know that that was something that we were capable of doing, so that would be interesting information as well.
Yeah, and agree. So that would be a separate recommendation. Is that that the task force direct staff or whatever request council to direct staff to undertake counts 2 or 3 times throughout the course of the pilot. So obviously, dates and times are going to be crucial for that. We don't probably want to do the accounts on Monday mornings. Probably not a lot of ORV activity through Monday mornings, but likely a need for weekends and long weekends and those kinds of things to undertake those counts.
Okay. And then if anything else pops up that staff wants to track, they can actually do that as part of their report. So if they want to reach out to the director of development services or the manager of I can't think of what her job is. Miss Mustard.
Economic development.
Thank you. Yes, and then if they want to provide information, then they can put that ask into your report, and then it can come forward in the normal fashion.
Yeah, and agree. So I was looking at the recommendations for Mr. Carr there about, an assessment of the economic benefit, right? So that would be something that ultimately council would direct of the economic development division to review. They can determine how to make that assessment, how to gather that data, and ultimately then report it back on their own accord or through a combination report, whichever, to provide that information if that's something that the task force deems necessary.
Well, that's something, if we're going to refer it to staff, that's something that staff and council can determine. My position has always been that it's a health thing. It's allowing people that live in our city to enjoy our city, and everything else on top of that is a bonus. But I'm still more interested in people having some fun and enjoying life and enjoying the outdoors. That's probably more my focus than the economic spin-offs. But yes, okay, I've got two hands up. I've got Carolyn and I've got Tracy. Is your hand up too, Tracy?
I was just going to make a comment generally, just saying that it's so critical that we, collect all this data just to establish if it is a viable pilot. And I think this is, us doing our due diligence.
Okay. All right. Carolyn?
Yeah, I just want to speak to the economic development piece. We have to remember that, that can't have a lot of weight in this trial project because we put all the routes around the businesses. We actually only have one, I think there's 3 businesses on the route through Lindsay, and that's it. So we have to be careful not to try and put too much weight on economic development or economic benefits, because there's only, I believe, 2 food places and 1 gas station on that route. And so that's not really going to play a big role. The other piece, and this may be a separate motion or it may be part of this one, I just want to mention that we also talked about reviewing it after 1 year, like not the surveys, but reviewing the statistics and so on after the first year, just in case we need to tweak something as far as the routes are concerned, like if we're finding any issues somewhere, or if we're finding that we want to reroute something to allow businesses or some to benefit a bit. So,
and I'm not sure how that's going to work. And once again, I think we have to leave that with staff for their recommendations, because this is an election year. They may elect to bring the report back in November, or they may elect to bring the report back in December, in which case you would have a totally different council reviewing it. That is information that council is going to have to make a decision, and they're probably going to accept some sort of feedback from staff as to when the report should be brought back. And, because there's always the opportunity, if in fact there are issues, that it can be brought back anytime. Just because we're asking for a report in October, 4th quarter, pick a date, I don't care. It doesn't mean that you can't bring a report back in August. That's always flexibility that council always has. And Director Robinson, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dunn. Just a bit of, reconfirmation. This pilot that was approved by the task force is, I believe, for 2 years. So we would be looking at gathering the information, and it definitely would be into the next term of council before any information is brought back, unless there's separate direction from council to bring something forward ahead of the election next year.
And that's fair. I have, and that's a discussion council's going to have. I'm sure that when we present our recommendation to council, I'm almost positive they're going to refer it to staff for a report. And a lot of this stuff will be fleshed out. I just wanted, if we had some specific asks that we wanted included in that monitoring, that the task force should put them on the table to have that discussion. Okay, Brianne,
Hello.
were you able to capture the essence of our conversation?
I believe so.
Um,
Do you want
is-
me to read it back to you?
Yes, if you could do that, then we could actually have a motion and move it to as a recommendation to council.
Okay, so I have that the task force recommend the monitoring process be referred to city staff. Information the task force would like to see included are time and date, caller info, complaint details, location of complaint, the frequency, whether the complaint is founded, unfounded, or unknown, staff to determine what can be feasibly be reported back on, and staff to bring back report. And then as a separate note, I have recommend that city staff are to determine the lead agency.
Okay,
Additionally, the task force requests council direct staff to undertake the traffic counts 2 or 3 times throughout the pilot, recommending that these be done on weekends and long weekends.
okay. Anything else as far as recommendations going forward? Anybody?
Councillor Dunn, do you want to go back through the some of the recommendations that were presented by John, or from the deputations from the public or correspondence, or is the task force satisfied with those recommendations as discussed?
Well, because most of this information is going to be generated by staff.
So staff will need ultimately direction from either the task force or council. So I think the intention from today would be to understand from the task force exactly what they want to see, and not just to simply say, you know, staff figure out what the what the recommendations are. So again, we can absolutely provide additional review and commentary and recommendations to council based on those task force recommendations. But I think it'd be wise for us to, as a task force, have a conversation to say, these are the things that we are recommending based on, you know, those other feedbacks. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, all right. Tracy's got her hand up, so I'll go to her first, and then we'll see if we can't come up with an answer. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just putting it out there. I know we've said it was a 2-year trial, as Director Robinson said, but my concern is I really still think we need to do that 1-year review, so we know where we stand. I think that's critical.
Okay. And I agree with you. I'm not sure who should do that 1-year review, but I think the 1-year review has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the surveys go, the economic impact survey, there's a gas station and 2 businesses. None of the other routes interact with any businesses. Like there simply aren't no businesses for them to interact with. So I honestly don't see I mean, if people are hanging their hat on the fact that we have a route through Lindsay and the auxiliary routes that are identified in it'll come in the rural areas, hanging your hat on economic development isn't the place to hang your hat, in my opinion, because there's only 3 businesses, 1 gas station and 2 food places that are affected. So I don't see the value, and economic development may disagree with us, but I don't see the value in that particular survey. So as this task force, I wouldn't recommend that they recommend that particular survey. The survey of the routes, I have some issues with that, but not a lot. It'd be nice to get that feedback, but it should be laser thin. So if you live on Victoria Avenue north of Elgin Street, then that shouldn't be part of the survey. And I don't know, the 3 houses on Logie Street that are impacted. That's, if you're going to survey the people that are directly affected, then that's how laser thin I would like to see it. Having said that, once again, I live on Colburn Street. I don't get to choose who drives down my street. And I get motorbikes, and I happen to like motorbikes, by the way. I like the sound of them, but I don't get to say, well, no motorbikes can go down my road, or the handicap vehicles, or these e-bikes. That's not my choice. I live on that street, and I'm quite happy living there. And they personally don't bother me. So that's something that council is going to have to make a decision on, as to whether or not they want to have that laser thin survey. And we can certainly ask that question at council, but going forward from the task force, I don't know whether that's the route that we want to take. Does that help you? Okay, Carolyn, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I think that I don't think that we're going to get the results from that are really going to be beneficial. I think it's more important to get the results and statistics from the incidents and everything basically that's going to go to Aaron Sloan's office. I think that's the data that we really need, as well as the counts, as Juan said, which is great. I'm happy to hear that we can do that. But I think those are more important statistics and information on the success or failure of this than it is specific to the actual routes.
Yeah. Because I struggle with, okay, so you have a 10-person household.
Yeah.
Well, it's one household with 10 people living there. Is that 10 surveys?
Yeah.
Or one? So those are all issues that I just kind of struggle with. I mean, if council wants to do that, then they can certainly insert that in there. But I have some problems with it. As I said, there's a lot more people than the 3 houses on Logie Street that over in that neck of the woods that don't want to see ATVs. But So anyway, I've sort of beat that one up, and go ahead, Steve.
I just have a question in regards to the duration of this survey and reviewing the results. When is this starting? It's starting in May of 2022. Am I correct?
It would. We would start gathering the only information that the task force would want to gather. I mean, information is never a bad thing. So the more information you have on anything, the better off you are. But as far as the task force and the pilot program, we're interested in how the pilot program affects the particular routes that we've recommended and council has approved. So we may be interested with an ATV going down City Road 121. But that's not part of our recommendation, and that's information to have, but it's not part of the recommendation. So I think we should be focused on what council has approved as the trial project, and that's the information that we should be bringing forward. Go ahead.
So through you, Councillor Dunn. So if it starts in May 2022. Then it should be the duration of it will be after December 1st of 22, because that's the season I would assume that you'd want to get the data from. So there is a range that we need to look at of when it starts, when it finishes, not just blanket it throughout a 12-month period.
That would be my intention. That's how I feel. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so the task force has recommended to council that a pilot, should any pilot be approved, would be a 2-year pilot. So obviously there's been an approved route through Lindsay at this time. There's been additional recommendations to council as well that will be heard in December. Presuming, that recommendations go through as recommended. Again, the pilot would be a 2-year pilot. The dates and times for which the trails are open is defined within the bylaw. So what we would have, and there has been additional recommendations from the ORV task force adopted by council on those dates and periods. So what we would do is when we're bringing a bylaw back to council next spring ahead of the opening of the trails, we would identify those times. So we can report individually. We can provide an interim update after the first year, and then we can provide another report after the completion of the second year pilot. That's not a problem at all. It's just a matter of seeking that direction and getting that guidance to staff.
Okay. All right. Any further comments? Does everybody understand the motion? Can I have a mover? Moved by Carolyn, seconded by Steve. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That motion's carried. Okay. The next item on the agenda is next meeting date. My recommendation, and it's up to you, our term of office automatically comes to an end December 31 of this year. My recommendation to the last council meeting of this year is December the 14th. And I would recommend that we recommend to council that the task force be disbanded with thanks. Do we have any discussion on that? Because I think we finished our job. I think we did what we were asked to do. Can I have a mover? Moved by Don, seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor? And that motion's carried. I would like to thank everybody. This has not been a fun process. It's been an interesting process, but it certainly hasn't been a fun process. I think together we've done a good job. In fact, I think we've done a very good job because we started off with no structure. Trying to format ideas to put forward in front of council. And I think we've done that. And I congratulate each and every one of you members for the hard work that you've put into it. And have a Merry Christmas. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Don, seconded by Tracy. All those in favor? That motion's carried. This meeting is adjourned.
Bye now, everyone.
Right. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Hi, everyone.